Let's come to order. Roxy, would you please take roll?
Kalp. Here. Voorhees.
Yo.
Leahy. Gamba.
Here.
Davis. Godes.
Yeah.
Ingraham.
Here. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. If any council member has a conflict of interest with any item on our agenda this evening, please identify it at this time. All right, seeing none, I will open it up for any citizens who would like to speak to council about any items that are not on this evening's agenda.
Does Mr. Lay is there? Can I sit that seat?
In 14 days. And yeah, about 25 minutes would be my guess.
So optimistic.
Not that I'm counting. All right, seeing no citizen comments, I will bring it back to council for council comments. Mr. Godes.
Yeah, I think I want to express my appreciation for Jim Ingraham and the work that he's done in the last year. He was appointed to his seat when Catherine Trauger resigned, and has served us and the community incredibly admirably. And it was a tough position to take on, and it was thankless. We all know it's thankless, but it's particularly thankless when you get appointed in the middle of a term. So thank you very much, Jim, on behalf of myself. I'm not going to say on behalf of everybody, but I think it'd go without saying to not say that.
You all love me, I know that.
We do love you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you very
much. I'd like to say something too, and I'll also echo Jonathan's comments. It's been a pleasure to work with you, Jim, and thank you for serving. I'd also like to say thank you and to all the new council members that have stepped up, and I look forward to serving with Charlie and Tony and also Paula going in. And also, as far as the vote on the street tax, I feel like we heard the voters loud and clear on that. They spoke very definitively. So I feel like council has a lot of work to do moving forward, and just to prioritize streets as much as we can, do the most we can to get money out of the budget and move projects forward. I doubt very seriously that we will be able to meet the 10-year plan that we were hoping to meet, but we'll do our best to get streets improved throughout the city. So I look forward to working on that too.
Thanks, Shelley. Any other council comments? All right, we'll move on to the consent agenda. On the consent agenda this evening, we have item 11A, which is the award of an on-site sodium hypochlorite generation system equipment for the Red Mountain Wastewater Treatment Plant. Item 11B is the landfill site services time and materials contract bid. 11C is the IGA between the City of Glenwood Springs and Colorado Division of Parks and Wildlife. Item 11D is ordinance number 8, series of 2019, and ordinance of the City Council of the City of Glenwood Springs, Colorado, amending section 100.010.030C, the weed and grass control, to include the noxious weed management plan. That's a second reading. Item 11E is ordinance number 14, series of 2019, and ordinance of the City Council of the City of Glenwood Springs, Colorado, amending municipal code to allow Glenwood Springs City Council to reschedule or cancel a regular City Council meeting by resolution. That's also a second reading. Item 11F, which is ordinance number 15, series of 2019, and ordinance of the City Council of the City of Glenwood Springs, Colorado, amending section 070.040.060 of the municipal code. That's also a second reading. Item 11G is the award of a Northwest Colorado Council of Governments Project Thor contract related to a fiber optic network throughout western Colorado. I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I so move.
I second. I have a motion by Shelley and a second by Rick to approve the consent agenda. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
I'll just say this. When I came back to my house today after the working sessions and I saw the number of dandelions growing already, I thought, well, maybe I should be concerned about this noxious weed thing, but I'm in favor of it.
I was told that dandelions are not included on the list.
Yeah,
so we're in good shape.
Somehow deep down, I'm not sure that they should be excluded. But
I might agree with you there. Okay. Agenda item 12, 7th Street change order. Do we have a presentation? Mr. Walters.
I'm back. Thank you again. My name is Derek Walter with Boundaries Unlimited. I'm here tonight representing for the project there out at 7th Street. Terry Parch had put together some information in your packet for you. Unfortunately, she wasn't able to be here tonight to present what's going on out there and why this change order is being requested, or your input on it is being requested, because she had to be out of town. So she asked me to step up in her place. I'm aware of what's going on out there and brought it to her attention as your inspector on the project. And so what we have going on, can I put this over there for you? Okay. So what's going on out there is that Gould Construction, as part of their demolition work, removed the curb and gutter that's on the south side of the roadway. And yeah, we're going to zoom in a lot there, won't we?
It'll take a second.
And in the process of removing the curb and gutter, they exposed some significant deterioration of the sandstone bands that are in that paving. Those sandstone bands were installed in 2013, 2014 with the original 7th Street project. The landscape designer at the time had specified those materials to go in there. It looked beautiful. They sealed the top of them, the DDA did, but what we have found is that when the concrete that's adjacent to them was pulled away, several of them, most of them in fact, along the edge of that concrete fell apart. And it's because there's been a significant amount of water absorption inside of those stones. The layers in sandstone, they weren't the right material for this type of application. They run horizontally, and so the water would come in, and even though there's weep hole drains in the bottom of the concrete, the water would come in and be absorbed along the sides of that sandstone, which wants to absorb some more water, and it just started expanding them throughout the winters. And now we've got extensive flaking that's going on. You can see in this photo, looking at it horizontally. Here's a picture of one of the stones on the side. You can see that we've got a lot of lateral layering that's occurred. And this stone shows you that even though the surface looks okay right now, we're only a scuff away from this whole section, 1.5 inches of it coming apart in this stone. And same thing here. You can see how bad that layering's got inside of there. And so what we asked Gould to look at for us was to give us a pricing to go in from Cooper Avenue to Grand Avenue. That's the section from the Pullman across Juicy Lucy's, the Eagles, and the Riviera. What it would cost, since we're in that construction zone anyways, working right in there, there's a lot going on already with pedestrian control and access and such, and it's being paid to with a lot of attention. What would it cost to go through and replace all of these deteriorated stones, the bands, with our new granite? Granite's a stone that's not going to have the same problem. It's not in a layered, I can't even, homogeneous, is that the right word, maybe? I don't know. It's, in any case, I'm not the geologist, but we don't have the same type of layering in that stone. And so the number that's been presented to you in the packet was provided by Gould and their mason to acquire the stone that would be necessary, the black granite, to go in and get that stone delivered. It would come from Cold Springs, which is the supplier of the same stone that the city purchased before. It would come in a 2-inch thickness instead of a 3-inch thickness, which the previous stone came in. The reason for that is so that we don't have to tear out also the mortar bed that's existing, but we just need to scuff up the mortar bed, and we could use these same stones, which are very close, actually I think a 1/2 inch thinner than what the sandstone was. So a new mortar bed can be put in quickly, get these into place, and get out of there. It would remove all those existing bands along there. The change order that was presented in your packet to do that, I'm not gonna lie, it's a lot of money. But what we're running into is that if it's not done now, it's gonna come up very, very, very soon. Unfortunately, we had seen before, Leslie and I had watched a couple of those stones falling apart along the street. The reason we didn't have them torn out in the original projects is because we were concerned about budget costs. We were afraid that the whole project might go over budget and that we were doing everything we could to live with what we could live with. But the numbers came in very favorably, over $1 million favorably, which was fantastic. Still weren't looking to make this replacement. We were hoping that maybe those sandstones were still good enough, but what we found out is that really they're not. They're falling apart very, very rapidly. So the price that you had in your packet that Terry had presented to you, I've actually gotten it slightly decreased. The number that was presented was $43,775. And I have before me a revised change order that brought it down, not a whole lot, but $1,600 more to $42,132.36. After working closer with Gould and their mason, asking more questions, they were able to find some places to knock that number down a little bit for us.
Could you repeat that number? It's kind of hard to read. 42,132.60. Is that what you said?
$42,132.36.
36.
Yes.
Okay.
So that's what I'm coming with you to tonight. Is it absolutely essential? No. Will it come up again very, very soon, and will it likely cost more later? Yes. And so that's why we're presenting it to you now with this request, as opposed to just letting the project finish out. We'd hate to see all these businesses that are going through so much right now have to have it happen again next year or 2 years from now. It just seems like now's the time to take care of business. So I'm here to answer questions. I don't know if there's any public comment or anything like that that goes on in this for this kind of request, but
yeah,
I'm here to field what you got.
All right, thanks, Derek. Steve?
Do we not have a stockpile of this material?
We had to stockpile this material for the current project. There wasn't enough, or it wasn't ever considered to replace these vans in that previous purchase. If we had purchased them, they would have been thicker anyways, which would have cost more because we'd have to take out that mortar set, so it actually works out pretty well. We could get the stones cheaper at a later date. The reason, we've got another supply option, but it's 10 weeks out. 10 weeks doesn't fit within Gould's schedule, so we would be looking at getting finished with this area, to open it up, to close it back up again. And so, and that change would only actually result in about $3,500 of savings. It wasn't real significant. It is some savings, but didn't seem like enough to close down in front of businesses again.
But I just thought we had, like, sitting out in the boneyard somewhere, some pallets of this material.
You do, but that's the 3.5-inch thickness. We need the 2.5 so we don't have to tear out more mortar set and increase this price more.
Oh, there's not that kind of sand buried in under.
No, all those stones that are out there, all stones are mortar set. It's only the bricks that are sand set.
Oh, gotcha. You're at like at about $84 a square foot.
Yeah, but yeah, that's true.
Installed.
There's a lot going into that number. I talked to them about that, asking them about it. It does include a lot of the demo work. And along with that demo work, it's not about just peeling up the sandstone and putting a new one right there. When you peel up that sandstone, it's going to disrupt the adjacent sandset pavers right along it.
Right.
So this number also includes the time and labor to reset, about a half foot to a foot band of clay pavers on each side.
They did just, and I'm not here just trying to beat you up here, but just so I understand fully, because I don't want to spend another dime on this.
I agree.
But we just brought in a new water line, sewer line into the Eagles building, and then they just replaced that band today, I think, with more of that same sandstone.
They're putting in some of the sandstone right now because that was if this doesn't get approved, they needed to be able to keep moving on. The stone was purchased, it was available, it was in place, and so the decision was actually made we thought that stone band was going to go in about a week ago. Right. Some of them just went in today.
Yeah.
But they were saying that before that they needed a decision last week on whether or not to proceed forward or to stop, which could have resulted in a construction delay and fees for that. So the decision was made to let them install the stone bands in case you all so decided that you didn't want to replace this. Going along with it, I know one of the other questions you would ask is, well, what will it cost us just right now to replace the damaged stones that we have? And so I do have that number as well. So the stones that I mentioned and I showed you the pictures of right along the edge of where the concrete had been taken out, if we were just to replace those 2-foot by 3-foot stones across there, I've got a number and a proposal here from Gould. To do that is $14,267.
And that's with sandstone?
And that's to replace it with sandstone again. Yeah, the same sandstone that was put in before. So that amount is going to need to get spent regardless. It's whether or not we would move forward with the $42,000 one versus this $14,000 one, which those previous ones only lasted, those are in 2013, so we're 6 years. So do we want to spend, that's the question to you, would you like to spend $14,000 for 6 more years?
Right.
Yeah, I'd like to turn them over.
We could do that, and it'll be a nice sand bed the kids could play in, or the cats could use.
This isn't exactly the time for comment, but I'll go ahead and comment since I was asking questions about it, with your permission.
You have my permission.
Unfortunately, we just went up both Wing Streets with the exact same product. And I have walked that with Leslie Bethel all the way up and down 7th Street, and we talked about how that product wasn't holding up. And I know we were trying to actually, Leslie was trying to catch that before it went in up and down the Wing Street. So we're going to actually be, I'm just saying, 7 years from now or 6 years from now, up and down those Wing Streets as well with the same issue.
Yeah.
My biggest disappointment, I guess, is if we replace now with granite that doesn't match the Wing Street treatment. It's just different.
There is actually some of that mismatching already going on. Because we saw what was happening on some of these pavers right before construction when we did the change order for the section from Grand to Colorado. We specified that to be in granite, so you approved a change order for granite on that one, so we wouldn't have this issue come up again later in that section.
Where is that again?
From Grand to Colorado.
From Grand, so across
Basically
Slope and
from
Hatch, the
grind,
grind, that section, and there's the bell bonds.
Gotcha.
And then also the portion of 7th underneath the bridge, between the roadway and the underbridge area, that's in granite pavers also through there. So the transition is really starting on that street in that corner at the Riviera, and then granite to the west, we have the sandstone to the east.
So 7 years from now, when you have to replace it all up the Wing Streets, you feel comfortable that you'll find similar product to do that with?
The same problems or the same granite available?
Same stone.
Same stone.
So we've got the 2 sources that are available that have very close matching materials. One comes from Cold Spring up in, is that Minnesota, I believe?
Yeah.
Or Wisconsin. The other one, there's one from India I've got that was brought into my office the other day that is extremely close match. That's the less expensive one. And supposedly it's got a huge quarry out there also. So it appears that there's a good opportunity, unless for some reason this becomes the gold of stone in the future, that we'd be able to acquire the materials needed.
Thank you, Derek.
I have a question for you, Derek, and I suspect I know the answer to this, but we chose the black. I'm sure you chose the black granite because it's already on the project, and I'm fine with the black granite being out in the street and everything. I'm thinking I'm just purely thinking aesthetically. I like granite, but I'm not sure along the sidewalk bands I like the color black. And I'm wondering, is it possible, without totally screwing up the schedule and everything, to find a light gray sandstone? Or I know that getting any kind of a buff color is unlikely in a granite, but I know there's some red granites out there, but that wouldn't contrast with a brick. But is there any other color of granite that we could choose for the sidewalk bands?
We didn't do a lot of investigation in that, I'll be honest, because we've already got 2 pallets there that Shannon had designed. To add a 3rd pallet into it seemed like that would really start to create a hodgepodge in there. The black banding was the reason that Shannon, I remember her and I talking about it, it really picked up a very nice contrast between the red, because that's the other thing that you want to have is that deep red brick. You want to have a complementary color, and the black granite versus a gray granite versus even the tan of the sandstone really brought out a higher quality aesthetic in the surface than many of the other stone options did. She looked at the carnelian originally as well, but there was too close of a red match in it to where it just made it look kind of like you hadn't thought about it or taken the time to put it in. So yeah, the black one was always really excited about with that.
Okay, thanks. Shelley?
I had similar questions to Steve's, and I'm also, it's tough to spend money on a change order like this when the material just went in 6 years ago, but I also appreciate that if we have material that's not performing, it's just going to cost more to change it out later. So I do have a question on the wing streets. Is there any way we can seal those again, or seal them in with a different material or something, try to get 10 to 12 years out of them instead of only 6? Or if you guys have ideas on that, that would be good.
The sealing that occurred or that was used on the 7th Street project, it was applied after the stones were in place, which is what you'd be doing on the wing streets as well. So it was a top coat surface treatment that, from what I understood, it actually probably needed to be put on every couple of years through the process. But the thing that it still wouldn't have accomplished, so it would have stopped water coming through the top surface.
Right.
What it wouldn't have helped with is water coming on the sides and getting inside all of those little thin layers. It's just, fortunately, sandstone was definitely the wrong material to be using there. And when you look at the wing streets, tough parts you're going to have happen there. On 7th Street, the water was flowing with the alignment of the stone, and we still saw this problem. On wing streets, the water's flowing perpendicular to the line of the stone, so water's actually being caught by those sandstones in there, and so they're going to start absorbing it really quickly. You know, if we got 6 years out of one stone with the water flowing with it, I'm pressed to think that it's going to take fewer years for this wing street stone to start really deteriorating.
Okay. But I guess we have at least 5 or 6 years to think about that, hopefully.
Yeah, but definitely applying the seal coats, I don't know how it could hurt, but if the water is being caught underneath and on those layers, it's not going to help a whole lot, put it just on the top.
But if it could help even a little bit,
yeah, if
you
it gets you a
might
couple
wanna look
more
into
years
doing
out of
that.
the stone, yeah.
So what's the price on that thinner granite?
I didn't ask him to break it down to per
Like
the
a per
cost
square
of, like,
foot?
individual
because,
materials. Yeah, what it comes down to is about $80-some per square foot
right,
to do
it's
this
like
tear
86,
out
87.
and replacement. So on the areas where we don't have tear out, I think it was, and the material was already being provided. I don't remember exactly, but the install price was probably around $20-some a foot for install brand new.
Okay.
But in this case, tear it out, clean it, fix the pavers on the side, it ends up increasing the cost quite a bit because there's just so much more labor involved. Believe me, I hammered on them about these questions. How do we get this down? Why is this so much? And I got $1,600 down, but after they began explaining it more and more to me of everything that was going on, I realized that I wasn't going to be able to knock out tens of thousands of dollars. It just wasn't available.
Okay. Well, I appreciate that it was caught at least going west from Grand, heading towards Colorado. So, okay, thanks.
Rick?
Yeah, this is maybe just like a note to self or note to the future kind of question, but sandstone, is that used quite frequently in projects like this?
Well, I'm the civil engineer, not the landscape architect, so I don't know that answer. Yeah. Most of my world's in concrete and asphalt, to be honest, because I'm dealing with mega infrastructure.
I can say that I've got some, it's thicker, it's more like the peach blow sandstone that the pool was built from, and they may be of that age, but on a property I own, I have some slabs that are, I think, 6 inches thick and 6 feet by 4 feet, and they're fine. You know, so it's just the type of sandstone. This is a more friable sandstone than, I think, different types of sandstone. We needed a...
I did take a look at the red sandstone that's over on Cooper Avenue, because we put some of that in 2013 as well. And it's held up better. There is still some flaking that's occurring on the surface. I don't know if that's carried deeper into that material. But it looks a lot better than this did. I mean, Leslie and I were actually observing very significant deterioration out by the Hotel Colorado. It was 2 years ago when we really started to recognize a couple of those stones over there were just completely flaking off the top.
Thanks, Rick. Steve?
Well, I just want to make a quick comment that, I think that, you know, we should seal those every year. It wouldn't be a big deal to try to keep that Wing Street in place as long as possible. And the other comment is it's not about aesthetics. I've walked down there. You've got some ADA issues. I walked my 86-year-old mother to Juicy's today, and there are hazards in that banding where it's just uneven surfaces and the way it's flaked off. And so, you know, it's absolutely necessary to do something about that. I hate that it's not $3,700, but I understand too that, you know, exactly what you said, that with the having to work into the brick and it's tight space there, it's just not going to come out clean.
I have one more quick question too. Will this close the sidewalks for any amount of time? Because that was a big deal to the businesses to have the pedestrian access. And
Yeah, so the way I understand it is that as they pull up the stones, they will provide either an infill board or something to keep, so that people can still walk by. So they might peel them up real quick, stop people for a bit while they're peeling them up, get a filler in there so that people can walk along maybe a 4-foot path. Right now in front of Juicy Lucy's, they have, or in front of the Eagles, sorry, they have those ramps going across, bridge ramps. Those are a little big. I don't know if they'd want to carry those all over the place.
Yeah.
But something similar in nature so that people can get across there and then work the stones up, and when they've got them set, then move people to walk on this side while they finish up towards the and adjacent to the buildings.
okay.
Because that's the way I understand it. So no desire to close both ends of the street,
Closing off. Okay.
or to have people have to be rerouted constantly. That's not the desire at all. And Gould's very, very understanding and sensitive to all this. They've been putting up extra signs all over downtown area to make sure people can find businesses, and been very accommodating. I see them very often. Ask our citizens and tourists what they're looking for and say, oh, it's right around the corner over here, or let me show you. So they seem to really be working hard to keep that good public persona going.
Right, right. Yeah, I've noticed that too. So they're doing a good job.
They have done a great job. I had a lady, I'm not going to ramble, but I had a lady mid-block ask me how to get across the pedestrian bridge, and I told her there was an elevator right there, and she said she couldn't figure out how to page the elevator. So I took her back down there and pushed the button for her. Maybe we need a sign with an arrow.
Push here. Yeah.
Push here.
All right. Okay, thanks, Derek. Is there anyone from the public who would like to comment on this? We're considering whether to spend $42,132.36 on a change order to replace old sandstone bands on 7th Street. Seeing no public comment, I'll bring it back to council for discussion and/or motion.
Yeah, I'd make the motion to accept the proposed change order of $42,132 to replace the
And 36 cents.
and 30. Well, I don't know if I'll go that far.
I'll pay the 36 cents.
Okay. To repair as necessary.
I'll second your motion, Steve. You know, but would also like to make this comment. Obviously, it was a mistake to put in this sandstone, and that's not a knock on you, Derek, or really anybody. I've come to find that construction we live in a great place, but construction up here is complicated, and there are always unexpected difficulties that come along and mistakes that get made, and so you kind of hate to see them made because there's always a cost associated with them. But I think it's probably almost impossible to take on a major project and just have it go. You know, I'm not a civil engineer, but I used to hang around building big ships and things like that, and they never quite went as originally planned. So anyway, I sort of share the reluctance and particularly there was a mistake, but frankly, it'll cost us more later, and it's not safe. It needs to be done. So that's why I'm seconding your motion, Steve.
Yeah. Thank you. And you know, it's the whole freeze-thaw thing that we have here. If we had installed that sandstone in San Antonio, Texas, it'd probably be there forever.
Probably so.
All right. Any further comments? Let's call the question.
Ingraham, yes. Godus, yes. Davis, yes. Gamba, yes. Voorhees, yes. Kalf, yes. Motion passes.
Thanks, Derek.
Who do I leave?
Thanks, Derek.
Okay, thanks, Deborah.
All right, next item, Two Rivers Park, approval of an amendment to the design contract with Land Studio for landscape and lighting design.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council. This is pretty easy. I'm not going to go through the whole long PowerPoint, but we were working with Land Studio before our first bid of the Two Rivers Shoreline project back in November to help us with detailed landscaping lighting plans for the project. This scope would slightly broaden their original scope by adding some revegetation lighting along the trail down to the side channel. Let's show it on here. So trail down to the side channel as we were exploring those options with council, adding revegetation lighting also along the conceptual lighting for landscape designs on the lower trail, just along the river where we have some of those protected areas, leading to conceptual amphitheater area, those options to come before council. Part of that amphitheater area, which is $7,800. We're also adding in lighting for the pedestrian bridge and the river trail up to 8th Street. We found as we're increasing events in that park, we're constantly having to bring in spotlights for safety along those areas. It's extremely dark. We discussed that a little bit with the tunnel and the deconstruction of the old water treatment facility plant. So that'd be included in that scope as well. All these tasks would give us deliverables of final plans, construction documents, specifications for landscaping and lighting for the trail, side channel, restrooms, boat area, lower trail segment, amphitheater, pedestrian bridge, and river trail up to 8th. Some of those, depending on configuration, council ends up choosing at the end, including time and materials for a not to exceed of $28,200. And I'm happy to answer any questions you have.
Thanks, Brian. Any questions for Brian?
I have one. It's probably just refreshing my fading memory here. At our last meeting, I think we discussed an amendment related to doing things at Two Rivers. Was that with SGM or was
Correct.
that this?
No, that was SGM. That's for the expanded engineering and to bring back to council options that you asked us to look at for this plan.
Okay, can you give me a kind of a 1-minute education in the difference between what we approved SGM to do at the last meeting and what we're approving the Land Studio to do here, and how those two things relate?
So comparable to the Veltus Park project. So at the end of the project, we had River Works doing the actual construction of the project. We hired Great Ecology to do the landscaping plan, the planting plan that provide the riparian stabilization at the end of the project. This is a similar format where we have a landscaper and engineers who are designing the construction of the project. We come in at the end with those final riparian plantings along the riverbanks to provide stabilization for some of the changes in that slope. And like I mentioned, that we were already in contract with them before November, before we got in with SGM for these. This is just a little bit of an expansion of that with some of the changes that council asked us to bring back in that project. As a comparable, the planning plans similar that we did with Great Ecology was $9,000 for the Veltus Park project, and this would be $28,000 for the whole of the Two Rivers project, including the river trail.
Here's the thing I don't quite understand. I know, like Veltus, we had a project, and then we the architectural thing was a part of it. But at Two Rivers, we had a plan and designs and what have you. Had Land Studio already done work related to the previous design?
Yeah, we actually were first working with Great Ecology for the Two Rivers as well, and we switched over to Land Studio in the fall. I think that was in October, and so like I said, this was already in place. We're just kind of expanding it. Engineers are really bad with plants apparently, so we don't usually do the planting plans and revegetation through the construction design team.
This was part of the list of things council asked us to look at after our work session like 2 months ago.
Yes.
I'm sorry, could you say that again?
This is you guys, when we had a work session about a month and a half ago, 2 months ago, you asked us to look into other things. This is one of the things you asked us to look into and bring back to you.
Okay.
And since no one laughed, I will clarify that was a joke. I'm sure Mike is great with planting his garden.
All right, thank you.
So this is effectively the cost for the answers we're looking for.
Well, along with the change order we approved for engineering with SGM.
What Terry proposed at the last meeting with SGM is that cost. This is simply updating the planting and lighting and landscaping to match that with a different contractor.
I think we were told at that last meeting that this was coming.
That's correct. I don't remember who asked the question. You asked about subs, and we brought up, yes, Landscape Studios is one of those that SGM is subbing with for additional work that outside of the civil and structural engineering stuff.
Yeah. Shelley?
And does I'm mainly focusing here on just the landscaping design right along the river. Yeah. The River Commission kind of had a question on, the plant selection along there, and I know at Veltus Park we were very careful with that. Was it Great Ecology?
That's right.
The name?
Yes.
Was there a reason for that switch? And does Land Studio have the expertise in the kind of native vegetation along the river?
Yes, and it was even though the River Commission were actually the ones that connected us with Great Ecology for the Veltus project. Originally, the plantings in REP's original design was really just willow stakes, and the River Commission had a lot of concern about that, along with CPW, that you really need to have different habitation zones and plantings at different elevations.
Diversity.
Right, for a good, healthy riverbank. So we moved from kind of the placeholder generic planting plan that REP had suggested. We're working with Great Ecology. We did do a little bit of cost estimating, and Land Studio was not only cheaper, but I mean, this is what they do. They had the expertise to do the planting and landscaping as well as the lighting portion of it. So,
and they'll do the whole park, not just the.
That's correct.
This is a larger area, so.
Yep.
Okay.
And you have a map of that in your packet, and I just wanted to again point out that blue zone is going to be extended across the bridge down to 8th.
All right, thanks, Brian. I'll open up to anyone from the public if anyone has any questions about this. The issue before the council is whether to approve a change order to the landscaping and lighting design for the Two Rivers Park project in the amount of $28,200. Seeing no public comments, I will close it to public comment, bring it back to council for discussion and or motion. Don't all jump at once.
Okay. Well, I'd make a motion to approve the change order, I guess. It's not a change order, is it?
Yeah,
a change
it
order?
is. It is a change
The
order.
Land Studio in the amount of,
It's amendment to a design contract.
amendment to a design contract in the amount of $28,200.
We have a motion by Steve. Is there a second?
Second.
A motion by Steve and a second by Rick to approve the amendment to the design contract with Land Studio in the amount of $28,200 for landscaping and lighting design on the Two Rivers Park project. Any further discussion? Let's call the question.
Ingraham, no. Godus, yes. Davis, yes. Gamba, yes. Voorhees, yes. Culp, yes. Motion passes.
All right, next item. This is ordinance number 13, series of 2019, and ordinance of the city of Glenwood Springs, Colorado, adopting a new section 090.040.120 regarding hauling routes to the Glenwood Springs Municipal Code and setting forth regulations and permit requirements for commercial hauling operations in the city. This is a first reading.
Good evening, council. As in Derek's case, I am also taking over for Terry tonight. So I will not directly read off of the staff report, but I will be close to. This ordinance is being put out there because in 2017, as you know, we did a PASER analysis of all the streets in the city. Approximately 60–70% of those were in either failing or have failed conditions, according to the PASER analysis. So this is a way for us to be able to recoup some of the damages done by large heavy trucks, which do increase the rate of degradation of all pavements. So the ordinance will help the city to compensate for heavy truck use of city streets through assessing a fee for use based on the weight of the truck, the condition of the pavement, and the cost that the city bears to reconstruct its roads. In calculating the impact fees, the city will require the application to provide the city with information related to whether the goods or materials being hauled have been purchased, will be sold, or used within the city boundary. No impact fee will be assessed for hauling deemed to benefit the city, include sales and use tax. So this ordinance, you guys are aware of it. We have read it a few times. It's based off of factual information and data we can actually collect and assess based on easel loads and pavement conditions. So is there any particular questions, or Carl wants to add?
I was going to say, I think I'm going to follow up on that. At the last meeting, we had some discussion about how do we address those haulers who are actually directly benefiting the community. Say a semi-truck going to City Market. You just had an interview earlier with the owner of Jimmy John's across from my office, and when the food truck delivers to his, I mean, he's right off 82, but still, turns down 14th Street and parks. So how do we address those types of issues in the context of, and I'm going to read this into the kind of my discussion into the record again, since this is a continued hearing about going back to the early 2000s when we were facing the real possibility of oil and gas development up the 4 Mile corridor. How do we address the damage to our roads when these haulers or logging trucks are coming through? They're not stopping it. They're not delivering into our community. They're not providing goods and services to our community. They're simply using our roads to take materials someplace else. And more often than not, we don't get a tax benefit of any type out of that. So it's a long-standing issue that we have struggled with. The recession kind of intervened on us, and things quieted down. And as I said at the last meeting, you can recognize that because oil or energy development in particular, resource development is a real focus of this BOCC, from their support of things like Jordan Cove to not supporting legislation to protect Thompson Divide, in saying so that they believe that's the future of Garfield County. We have to recognize that extractive industries may be moving through our community. So how do we address that and also balance the interests of the local businesses? So what you have before you in subsection apologize, pushing the button and reading. Subsection, what would it be, D?
Yeah, D1E.
D1E is where we tried to do that. What I put on the dais tonight is that we got a version of this into the packet because, as you know, our packet turnaround is pretty quick from the council meetings to when we have to get things in. And then I did a couple of revisions based on staff conversations that are redlined there. I can put it up on the screen for the public to see, to try to really hone in on the idea that this is what we're trying to accomplish here in terms of sales and use tax. Roxanne, if you could put that up. So what we tried to do was, and I'll just read it off, is determination of the tax benefit. So you're going to have to go through the analysis on your haul route about what the impact is. But then we make a determination on tax benefit that if the goods or materials being hauled have been purchased, will be sold subject to city sales tax or used within city limits. And we originally were thinking 81601, but the reality is we're talking about money that we're spending on our city streets. So really, we need to be, I think we should be specific to city limits on this. And subject to use tax, this hauling is deemed to have a benefit to the city, including sales and use tax, as well as benefits to the citizens of Glenwood Springs. No impact fee will be assessed for this hauling. So that would apply to city market. We want to know what their haul route is, and we want to calculate what that impact is. But we're saying, look, if that's being delivered to city markets so that those goods can be, and food can be sold in our community, that's a benefit. Those goods are, there's not all food, but there is some sales tax coming back as community benefit, right?
Can I interrupt real quick? On the subject to use tax, would that exclude then, I'm building a new home in Glenwood?
Exactly. So you should be paying use tax in Glenwood if you're bringing materials in to build a new home or an apartment building or a city or whatever. So that's that idea. That has a real benefit. We see a direct benefit to that, and that goes into that use tax calculation. A portion of that is dedicated to streets and A&I. So that's why we felt like that was an important thing to do. What I didn't include, and I might suggest in the second reading, but I wanted to raise this, is that we added an F in there, which is allow for a community interest waiver. There may be something happening that doesn't fit into the sales tax category, but has a direct community benefit. I want to leave that up to council to make that determination.
So that would be written into that subsection
F.
So
I'm thinking that we maybe add a section, but I just wanted to run that by you. If that's something that you thought would be important, we can do it on second reading. But I just in thinking about it, there may be something that came up.
A new Grand Avenue bridge.
Right. Exactly. That is something that wouldn't be paying use tax on. It's not our project. It's CDOT. They're going to have to use city streets. It's a great example. So I kind of think that probably should be in there, but I wanted to check with you guys and see if you felt so as well.
I would support that. Anyone else?
I think that's reasonable.
Some type of discretion, or even if it has to come before council.
Well, yeah, I think it would absolutely have. I would want it to come before council. It's not something that we want to make that kind of community interest decision at the staff level. I think that's absolutely why you guys sit up there.
So do we have the apparatus together to collect the current use tax?
Yeah, oh yeah, no, we collect use tax.
It's no burden by putting this on the books and standing it.
No, the change, and I think the burden's going to be we're going to have to start processing permits, right? That and enforcement. So those are the two things, but that's going to happen no matter what the language is. And recognizing we're trying something new. If it's not working the way we hoped it would work, legislation is organic. It has to change over time. So I think it's a good, in light of, like I said, in particular, sorry, Roxy hates it when I do that. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In light of, what we're seeing development around us in the extractive industries, I think it's important that we take some steps, and looking at what we're spending on the 27th Street Bridge in South Midland in the next 2 years, it's in the magnitude of $24 million. I'd like to protect that investment.
Great. Yeah, thank you. Any questions for Matt or Carl on this before I open it up to the public? All right, seeing none. Thanks, Matt. Is there anyone in the public who would like to comment on this item? All right, very engaged public this evening. Bring it back to Council for discussion and a motion.
I'll make a motion, and then I'll make a comment before somebody asks the second. But I'm going to move that we approve ordinance number 13, series of 2019, an ordinance of the City of Glenwood Springs, Colorado, adopting a new section 090.040.120 regarding haul routes to the Glenwood Springs Municipal Code and setting forth the regulations and permit requirement for commercial hauling operations in the city. So that's the motion, and I making it quickly, not just because I'm hungry, but I think it's spot on, it's important, and Carl's point of we're spending, by the time it's said and done, might be $25 million, a lot of money on a place that receives a lot of traffic that doesn't fit into that exception that you crafted there, and I think it's important that those that are using that, and frankly, as Terry Parch told us, causing sort of an inordinate amount of damage to our roads, pay to keep those roads in good shape. So
I would second that with a comment.
Go ahead.
Just that, this didn't just come to us tonight. We have work sessioned over this and wrung our hands and talked about it for a long time now. And so this brings a close to that discussion, hopefully. So
I have a comment too. I mean, this was discussed when I was on council it was either in 2008 or around that time period. So I think it's long overdue, and if it can protect our streets as we're able to rebuild them and keep them in better condition or keep them from degrading more, then it's important. So
yeah, I would I've been on council for 8 years, and it's been a consideration for that entire time. We got really serious about it about, I think, 4 years ago. Not in response to this, but there was a proposal, if everyone might remember, to locate a FedEx transfer facility out on Airport Road, south of Glenwood Park, and the impact to Midland Avenue with all those semi-trucks going down Midland Avenue would have been disastrous. What we've experienced this winter might already be considered disastrous on Midland Avenue. Imagine if we had, I don't remember the numbers, I think it was like 30 trucks a day or something of that nature. And one semi-truck is the equivalent of about several thousand passenger vehicles in terms of its deleterious impact on a road. So we considered at that time, we never got the right language put together. I think this is I think this is well crafted. I want to thank Carl and Terry for their work on it, and whoever else worked on it. I think it's good. You're right. After it's in place for 6 months, we may need to, or you all, because I'll be gone, may need to change it. But I think it's a good first step. So we have a motion by Jim and a second by Steve to approve ordinance number 13, an ordinance of the City of Glenwood Springs, Colorado, adopting a new section 090.040.120 regarding haul routes to the Glenwood Springs Municipal Code and setting forth the regulations and permit requirements for commercial hauling operations in the city. Let's call the question.
Ingraham, yes. Godus, yes. Davis, yes. Gamba, yes. Voorhees, yes. Kalp, yes. Motion passes.
All right, thank you. Next item, arts plan estimates.
Sorry, Matt and I are just going to be dancing back and forth up here tonight. Good evening again, Council. So at the January 3rd work session with the Arts and Culture Board, the Arts and Culture Board presented to Council a list of their priorities. The number one priority that they brought up was a master public art plan, including art preservation and restoration of historical art sites. council had asked staff at that time to bring back some estimates and give a recommendation on a cost for an art plan appropriate for our municipality and area. We reviewed several municipality plans, had a lot of discussions with a couple of professional art plan consulting firm. We actually contacted 6 of them and got some estimates on what affects those prices the most. We found that public input and public charrettes and surveys, things like that, have the most elasticity in the pricing of a public art plan for the size of our community and the scope of what we're looking for. Their suggestion was somewhere between $8,000 to $50,000. The town of Superior is doing an art plan right now fairly similar to what we want to do for about $50,000, but much more involved with public input than I think we're looking to do. A supplemental budget request for an art plan was submitted for the 2019 budget, but wasn't approved, and was fine at the time. We have a very full plate of a lot of things we're doing, but the Arts and Culture Board did feel very strongly that this needed to move forward. Our staff recommendation with speaking with some of the professional art plan consultant firms would be $20,000, but staff defers to council to decide if they would like to allocate those funds for the completion of the plan.
Thanks, Brian. Rick?
So I see that, if I've got this right, Brian, we're sort of conducting an inventory of existing pieces of public art.
Yeah, and I included in the packet a example RFP of what we would go after, just kind of a rough draft, which includes the scope of what we're looking at. So we have already done an inventory of all of our current existing public art that is owned by the city. We have values of those. We haven't gone to insurance yet to get the insurance values of those. But we have those. Jen Uten has worked with us on trying to get that on the website. We will be putting up educational placards, telling, hey, this is the artist, this is when it was installed, or who the sponsors were, things like that, as a public outreach. But this plan would start with looking at what art exists in the community, where are areas that we are missing art, as you would, almost like a GIS layer of art, if you want to think about it like that. It would give a lot of public input, very similar to the process we went through for the North Landing art piece, but in a holistic municipality kind of a scope. And they would give recommendations for not only best practices in how to get public art interest, in doing a call for art, but also a recommendation of funding options for those, grants, assistance with those as well. So it's pretty involved, but again, like I said, how much of public outreach we want to do is what's really going to affect that price. And we do have an Arts and Culture Board that represent the community in that capacity that we can really lean on for a lot of that and have some cost savings.
So we'll be likely hearing more then about locations and plans to fill gaps, and so you anticipate that would be something that would be 6, 7, 8, 9 months down the road, or a year down the road? I'm just trying to get the shape of this.
Yeah, so this could start, well, I don't know. We haven't put out that RFP and gotten that scope yet, but from what I've heard in consultation with similar plans for what we're looking at, it's usually about a year process. And a lot of that depends on how much of the city has already gotten into public art, or if we're still, like us, just really starting out with something to give us a vision of what we want to do. And to speak to because I don't see any of the Arts and Culture Board here, kind of speak to what they want to present to council is, they were formed by council to advise council on how we should go forward with the arts. And I think they kind of also need help getting a roadmap for where we are and where we want to go to help council make those decisions in an educated manner.
Thank you.
I believe they from your work session, they took away that you guys said yes to this and that we should find the funding. I can honestly say I did cut it out of the 2019 budget requests. And Brian will never tell you this, but he is very, very busy. So it's totally up to you guys. The Arts and Culture Board does feel very passionate about this and said they do feel like you said yes. I heard put it in the 2020 budget, but I sometimes hear that when you don't intend that.
If we were to fund this, any thoughts as to where the funding would come from?
I think that we can get cost savings out of the arts program budget to support this cost at a $20,000 level.
Mm-hmm. From the arts funding that we have in recreation parks
for
and
programs, yeah.
Right. Okay.
When you say that, you'd be cutting something else out of that whole budget?
I'm sorry, maybe I don't understand your question.
You said that you could sort of find the funding from the existing budget item, and I was wondering, does that mean something's being cut, like a program that we're doing or something?
Sure. Well, to keep Steve happy, we try to keep under budget in all of our funds. So there, we usually have a little bit of surplus there, and we can just, as we go throughout the year, just earmark that $20,000 and look at cost savings or revenue increases to support that throughout the year. We're pretty early on, so I'm confident that we can meet that.
And this is something that the Arts and Culture Board has worked very hard on. They feel like, we have some art pieces around town. They're somewhat cataloged, but it's not always clear what is where, and this would allow them to do GIS mapping, I think, is part of that. At least it's listed in here. That's something they've talked about, and I think it might be able to be done in-house. But to get the art locations mapped, at least have a layer in the Glenwood Springs GIS mapping, so that then they can have those pieces of art or murals or whatever they are cataloged, even eventually have a map, like an art walk throughout the city, so that people know who the artists are, they know about them. It also lets the city know where they are so that the art can be maintained, because if it's not maintained, and not really known about, in this case, when you get changes in staff and changes people that were running the program, then we're not really taking care of that art and taking ownership of it. So this would put that whole plan and process in place also, so that it survives beyond staff and beyond this Arts and Culture Board. That's their intent.
Yeah, and maybe just a last note from our side to speak to some of Deborah's comments. We were approved for a lot of plans this year. We're doing the Whitewater Park plan, Sayre Park plan, 3 Mile plan, the Two Rivers we're finishing up. Our plate is full, and Craig and Ty are here. They would love to see us do a South Canyon plan. We have a whole list of plans that we want to get to, and we're trying to work on a 5-year capital improvement plan schedule of those. And so, this wasn't lightly said no to, but, we can only do so much every year, and there's kind of a list of priorities. And so I think we would lean very heavily on the Arts and Culture Board to help head this up, assist us with it. But they are, they're gung-ho. They really want to make this happen, and I know that they would put in the time to do it. I think that they did come away from that work session feeling like you were approving budget and you just wanted to hear what the number recommendation for that was. Mm-hmm. And so that's just giving what I know that they would come up and say.
I appreciate how busy you are and all the projects you're working on. Am I correct that this would be funding for a consultant? I understand that doesn't mean you get to just ignore it and not do any work, but would it take a significant amount of your time?
I do a little bit of oil painting, and that's about the extent of my art expertise. Yeah, so we would hire a consulting firm, and you know, they give us the schedule. They arrange and run the public charrettes. They come up with the public surveys. You know, and obviously there's a lot of input from staff, but really I'm looking to the Arts and Culture Board to give them the vision and the direction that the city wants to go with it.
And we have some very qualified and dedicated people on that board. Bonnie, how do you say her last name? Kravitz?
Yeah, who is actually the head of the Arts Council as well.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, what was that, Brian?
Bonnie, who's on our Arts and Culture Board, is also the head of the Arts Council. She's very connected with the art community and really trying to push this through and spearhead it.
Stephanie Davis, and they've been putting in time, and so I think they would work hard on this too.
All right, any other questions for Brian on this? Thanks, Brian. Is there anyone in the public who would like to comment on this item? All right, seeing none, I'll close it to public comment and bring it back to council for discussion and/or motion.
I'll make a motion. I move that we approve the amendment to, excuse me, I'm looking at the wrong. Bear with me for just a quick second here.
Agenda item 15. Jonathan's button was pushed. Can I go to him real quick and then come back to you?
Yeah.
Jonathan?
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to deny the $20,000.
You maybe have a remedial scrolling going on here?
I'll just make a comment, and Rick, I'll let your motion stand. But I will vote against it if you do have that motion. I think there's been one conversation we've had today where we haven't spent somewhere between $30,000 and $130,000, and I know we needed to do the bands because we don't want to have to replace those at a much greater cost in 5 years. Thanks for helping out, speed the process along. But I appreciate this. I want to see art in our community. I want to see vibrancy in our community. I like special events. I voted for that today, or gave the head nod. But I guess I just don't know enough about what 20,000 gets us, and I'm just a little weary of spending money at this point in the meeting. So I'm probably going to vote against this right now.
Thanks, Jonathan.
A little bit of a precursor there to my motion.
But go ahead.
Well, I move that we approve $20,000 for the completion of a public art plan as presented this evening.
I'll second the motion.
All right, we have a motion by Rick and a second by Shelley to approve $20,000 for the completion of an art plan. It is my understanding that that Brian is expecting to be able to find this $20,000 in within his existing budget, so it technically is not a budget increase, which you know, I think that I don't disagree with your perspective on this, Jonathan. If we were having to find an extra $20,000, I would agree with you. If this is just kind of a repurposing of $20,000 in our existing budget, I agree that you know, art is one of those things that it's not new roads, it's not a police department, it's not a fire department, but it's also I think art is also important. This is coming from an engineer, so this is strange, but
it might not be bronze heads, though, Mike.
Yeah, as you know, I'm still waiting for the Bernini fountain to show up here, but you know, I might be waiting a while on that one. So I think this is a start. I think for a long time, Glenwood has bounced between mediocre public art and bad public art, and I would hope that we could improve that a little bit, and I hope this is the first step in that process. Jim?
Yeah, thank you, Mike. I'm not sure what button my finger is going to land on at this point. I'm sitting here looking at Rick, the back of Rick's computer.
Yes.
You know,
here, for
and
the
I'm saying
public,
that
this is what he's looking at. This is Familia Sagardia in Barcelona.
Yeah.
And thinking about how art might not be quite in my sweet spot, but I know every great place I've been to has invested in the arts, and that makes my finger go to yes. My finger wants to go to no for every reason that you said, Jonathan. I agree with that entirely, and I also sort of think like is making a catalog of Glenwood's bad to mediocre inventory really moving us forward, and that makes me want to go to no, and so I guess I'm a little conflicted, and we'll just see. Okay.
Do you want a coin to flip?
Yeah, I'll make up my mind between now and then.
All right. Shelley?
Well, and I appreciate your comments, Mike, too, because I'm just a dabbler in art and a lover of art, but I think that it's very important to the community. And I've watched this commission work very hard over the last year and a half, and this helps them put a plan in place that will be something that the community can work on and build on going forward. So for a $20,000 investment, we'll have a plan that can help us improve that art that's out on the street and keep it cataloged and keep it maintained. And I also feel that, you know, we did, to speak to Jonathan's comments, we have approved a lot of money tonight, but for example, we you know, quite easily put $100,000 towards events that are one-time events in the city, and those are great and they're fun. But this is a lasting investment for $20,000. So I think it's a good use of funds, and I'll approve it.
Go ahead, John.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
I don't mean
I'm
to get in an argument. And if we could actually get some art out of it and be lasting, but it's a plan to get art. I mean, this is where the art community and some of these groups that call themselves leaders in the community about art, about this, they should be stepping up and fundraising for some of these things. I don't know that the answer is always to turn to the deep pockets of government, because if we get 4 or 5 bronze heads out of this, maybe I'd vote for it. It's a plan to do art. And it's so hypothetical in the ether that, anyway, I've said my piece. I'll be done.
All right, so we have a motion by Rick and a second by Shelley to approve $20,000 for the completion of an art plan. Let's call the question. The button isn't letting me push. There we go.
Need to light.
You gotta re-push yours, I think.
I did push it.
Try it again.
You have to push it again.
Ingraham, yes. Godus, no. Davis, no. Gamba, yes. Voorhees, yes. Kalp, yes. Motion passes.
All right.
Thank you.
Next item, landfill rate study and resolution adoption of new rates.
I am back, and I'm not asking for money. No money being asked for in this situation.
You're going to bring us more money, I understand.
In theory, yes. The landfill, good evening, Council. The landfill last did a rate adjustment in 2013. It was resolution in 2013, adjusted rates to where we sit today. In our perspective, the landfill should be looking at rate adjustments as frequently as water, sewer, and electric would be every 2 or 3 years. So we're at 6 years at this point since we've done a rate adjustment. We hired AEC to do the rate analysis. What their original rate analysis was for last year was for solid waste, C&D, those kinds of fun things. And it wasn't really a rate analysis to tell us what we should bring the rates to. It was a rate analysis to tell us what we should bring the rates to break even. So they basically came up with an analysis that we need to raise rates 38% basically across the board to make up that $1 million loss that we were seeing basically every single year. Now that we have switched ownership or control or operations of the landfill, which is going quite well, I hope everybody's been up there. Jim was up there the other day. It was quite nice. Windscreens are up. We are anticipating actually after 2019, moving into 2020 in the future, approximately about a $500,000 profit out of the landfill at our current estimated revenues and expenditures. Thus far, so you'll know that we've actually been underneath of everything that we put within our plan. Our salaries are underneath of that. The T&M contract that you guys approved earlier tonight, all of those rates are underneath of our assumptions. So we're anticipating maybe this year we'll do better than even we were projecting. But to get back to the resolution, we have made suggestions not across the board for rate increases. These are kind of our main players in the landfill, which would be septic, grease, car wash, sludge or biosolids, municipal waste, which is our largest, we'll call it commodity, and then C&D waste. And what we've done is we've gone out and looked at what does West Garfield charge, what does Pitkin charge, what does Summit charge. Anybody in our area that's we'll call it a competitor, what are they charging? How far away are they from the main source of these things? You know, what can we charge that's reasonable for our businesses? Because in some cases we can raise rates 15, 20 cents a gallon if we wanted to, but that's not reasonable for our businesses. We were looking for a number that's reasonable for the landfill so that we can bring profits in, we can build up a little bit of reserves in there, and we can make improvements to the landfill with those monies instead of being in a negative every single year. So basically there's, you don't have this sheet, but septic right now is 20 cents. What we're proposing in the is in and out of county rates, which a lot of the landfills around us do, would be unchanged. So any of the septic coming in that's within Garfield County that's coming to us is still 20 cents. We do see a fair amount of septic, somewhere between 50 and 60% of what comes in comes from out of county, we'll call it. And we are looking to raise that rate 10 cents. So we would go to 30 cents a gallon. So I'm going to go through these real quick and then you guys can ask questions. Grease, we're currently charging 25 cents a gallon. In county, we would raise that to 30, so it's 5 cents a gallon. And out of county would be 35 cents a gallon. Car wash is currently 25. We would not change that in any way for in county. Out of county would go to 30. We don't get a whole lot of out of county car wash, but we do get some. Sludge and biosolids is currently $39 a ton. We would not change that for in county. Out of county would go to 45. We don't get a whole lot of sludge and biosolids from out of county, but we do get some. Municipal waste is kind of the bigger change, and it's not huge. We would go from $40 a ton to $49 a ton, and that would be in and out of county. That would be an equivalent rate. And then C&D, we would change it from $48. In county would be unchanged, it would still be $48, and out of county we would go to $68. Now, some of these things we are doing because, one, it's a fair and equitable number, and if you go through the reports, you will see that, like, refuse in Pitkin County is $86 a ton. Refuse out of county is $86 a ton. If you go to Rifle, in county is $42 a ton. Out of county is $84 a ton. So they're charging almost double what we would be proposing. So the intent is to slow down some of the trash that's coming in, but the stuff that does make it profitable for us, and because they're utilizing our airspace when they do not live in the county.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Can you just direct me to where you're seeing this Rifle and Pitkin County? What attachment?
Page 27.
Thanks.
Of the solid waste report from December of 2018. I believe it's on page 27. It's table 6.1 from the AEC report.
Solid waste report?
It's the third item down, if I'm not mistaken, on our...
It doesn't say in the thing, but when you open it, it says solid waste.
Oh, thank you. Go ahead, you can keep talking. I wanted to...
So in essence, what we're looking at is not raising the rates as much as we humanly possibly can. That does not fare for the city of Glenwood Springs residents, you know, Garfield County residents, those kinds of things. But we're trying to make it equitable for the landfill for taking in these products. You know, we could raise grease all the way up to 50 cents a gallon if we would like to, but that would be very detrimental for the businesses that are paying for it to come in. And a lot of those businesses that we have are local within the city of Glenwood Springs. We had mash back and forth a little bit, a conversation of changing rates from City of Glenwood Spring residents to Garfield County residents to out-of-county residents. But we didn't want to push that envelope at this point, because it is a City of Glenwood Springs owned and operated for the benefit of the residents of the City of Glenwood Springs.
You know, Matt, you know, if I look at our proposed rates versus what our competitors, you know, are charging, are you feeling good about, you know, the increase for out of county? I mean, I'm not seeing that much of a differential, and especially when I come back and look at what Pitkin's charging and Eagle and West Garfield for similar sorts of products, I guess, if you can call them that. So can you talk to that just briefly?
So it costs quite a bit to truck. So a lot of people are still using Pitkin County landfill. They do have a lot of C&D that comes in there because they take a lot of homes down in that area and they recycle them and they bring them to the landfill. But if you calculate how much time it takes to drive past Pitkin County landfill to the South Canyon landfill, pay our fee, which would be added onto at this point, C&D would go to $68, and then drive all the way back. One, they lose round trips per day because they can go to Pitkin County landfill much faster. They lose gas, they lose truck wear time, and they lose you know, the labor time for that person to drive that truck. So we were trying to make it so if they bothered to drive all the way to South Canyon landfill, which they may, that it's still more profitable for us. But it would be a really fine balance, and we've calculated all that. That's where we came out with basically the $68 and said, okay, if they want to, they can come all the way down here. And we use C&D in a little bit different way. If it's clean C&D, we actually grind it, and we use it for alternate day recover. If it's mixed C&D, we have a heavy compactor that we just purchased. We can actually compact that down quite nicely. And it does add some fiber to the landfill itself.
So as I look at Exhibit A, it looks like there's probably 5 categories in which we're establishing a out-of-county differential.
Yes.
And can you talk just a little bit about how those 5 areas got picked as opposed to the whole list, which is probably 20, 25 items?
So, yes, I can. So we kind of looked at what are the majority of the products that come into the landfill, and we kind of hit those. And we also looked at what are the majority of the products that come in the landfill from outside of the county or outside of the city limits. Mm-hmm. And we said, okay, this is for the benefit of the city's residents, so let's not change residential mix. You know, there's a minimum charge of $8. Most people that come in, they pay the $8. So we didn't want to raise that and have that minimum charge go up. If somebody just doesn't want trash service, which we actually have a lot of people that don't want trash service, they bring their trash bags, they pay $8 a month basically for trash service. So we were trying to balance it out, looking at how much does it cost us to actually process things? What are the large things that will actually have a change on what the revenue is in the landfill? And let's hit those things at this point. You know, we probably could do a rate study in another 2 or 3 years and look at basically everything. But these other products like large animals, yard waste, we actually take in, becomes as part of our composting. Non-friable asbestos, that's in line with kind of everybody else. And we only take certain kinds of asbestos. A lot of it goes to Junction in Denver. And then you hit the septic sludge, car wash, grease sludge, those kinds of things, which we are making a change to. And then tires, those kinds of things. We actually grind them up, and we sometimes use them in the landfill. So also products that we're using in the landfill, you know, we're not trying to drag every dollar out of everything. If it's profitable slightly, or even in some cases break even for us, we're trying to go with that so that we don't hit everybody for every dollar we can.
So if we've got, I'll just finish here real quick. So like the municipal solid waste, we're proposing no differential between ourselves and our neighbors up in Pitkin County, for instance. And so is that to say that as Pitkin County eventually moves to a transfer station, is there, you know, and I've heard 2 different stories about what's going on up there, but that we might in the future look at adjusting that higher? And if so, is that something that we consider now, or?
No, it's not something we consider at this exact moment. It seems when we make a change, when this change goes through, everybody around us is going to look at it and they're going to change slightly. If a transfer station gets put in there and other people see things coming their direction, a change will be made at that time also. So those things take planning. Everybody knows it's coming in. So at that time, we would take a look at that and say, okay, it's a transfer station. Where are they going to transfer it to? You know, so we would have to make rate adjustments at that time. So we kind of have to leave those things to the side at this moment because they're future items. We can change this 6 months from now if you want to. It's a resolution. You guys control what these rates are. We make suggestions. So if we see something coming and we'll let you know it's coming and we need to make rate adjustments, we would bring that back to council and have those discussions at that time. Once again, we find this to be fair and equitable. You know, we're looking at potentially a $500,000 profit. If we run these numbers right now, it's an additional $500,000 worth of profit if we keep with the stream we had last year. That would help us build our reserves back up, and then maybe we can sit on these rates for a few years and the profit becomes a little bit less because of labor, equipment costs, those kinds of things. And then when we see that we need to raise them again because profits have gotten to a point where we're not happy with them, then we would raise the rates again.
Okay. Thank you. Steve?
Mike? I pushed my button early on, and of course you answered whatever it was. And I dozed off, and I came back.
Okay.
I'm better with this than haul routes.
All right. Jonathan?
We're not a county landfill, right?
No.
So we're owned by the city, and it's for the citizen. I asked that kind of a little facetiously because I don't understand why we have a county rate and a non-county rate. Isn't that somewhat of a subsidy to Newcastle, Parachute, Rifle, Carbondale, unincorporated Glenwood Springs by having a rate lower than a business slightly outside the county?
So
I get why Garfield County does it, but
yeah.
Why wouldn't we have why wouldn't we have a city rate and a non-city rate?
So that was a thing we be back and forth a little bit before we put this in front of you guys. I think the answer to that question is we didn't want to change holistically at this exact moment, but we wanted to change because we know where a lot of our waste stream is coming from, and we wanted to make that a little bit less pleasant. And that the county, the landfill would take that in a little bit more profit. We could use the money right now, to be honest with you, to do some of the improvements that we need to do to the landfill with the composting, with the ponds that we need to dig, with our new sludge pit, depending on how the composting conversations go, those kinds of things. We could use the money at this point. So I don't want to alter the stream that's coming in. We want to make it so that we can profit from that stream a little bit more. And then in a year, if the council would like to have the conversation of making everything out of city rates, we can have that conversation. We would like to kind of get our feet underneath of us for the first year, know that we have profits coming in the door, know that we're not pushing the rates so high that the product will go elsewhere, and then our stream all of a sudden goes down and suddenly we are in the black or in the red, I guess, at that particular point. So we're kind of like to get through the first year of operations with reasonable rates that we know if our streams come in that we're making money off of it and we can pay for the improvements we know we need.
And certainly.
But then come back to council. If council wishes to have that discussion, we can do out of city rates, we can do out of county rates, we can do basically anything we want to do, but we still have to be careful not to push the waste streams too far out that the landfill has to operate with virtually no staff.
Right. It seems like maybe 81601 would be more appropriate than county. You want to, I always kind of consider everybody that lives up 4 Mile and at No Name is, part of us.
Yeah.
And you hate to penalize those people, but then you get beyond that. I'm not so sympathetic. I think my question a minute ago, if I could, is you're pumping municipal rates 20% here in Glenwood, and so would I expect to have a 20% rate increase on my from my garbage haulers that come to my door?
The garbage haulers will probably adjust for this, and they'll look at whether they should go someplace else, what's most profitable. They still have to keep their rates down because they still have to compete with each other. We just had a changeover with the purchase of a trash hauling company, so they're going to take a little while to figure that out. Most of the time when we bump rates, they don't bump them equivalently, they just make a little bit less. So will we see a rate change? I'm sure we're going to see a rate change with all the landfills around us, all the grease takers, all the septic takers, and potentially the rate haulers themselves. But this is a small amount for them per truck. So if you look at it as how much does that truck cost me to go in there, it's actually a small rate increase for them.
20%.
It's 20%, yes.
All right, any other questions for Matt? I have one just with respect to Jonathan's point, and the idea of doing it out of city or out of 81601, having a different rate there. Currently, am I correct that most of the waste from, say, Silt west is going to Garfield County regardless at this point? Is that correct? Or are we seeing much of our waste stream coming from that direction?
Just from verbal conversations with the haulers, because they don't exactly tell us everything, it seems like Silt is coming to us and everything west of them is going to Garfield County.
Okay. I thought it was like Newcastle was coming to us and Silt was going to Rifle, but you know, I think one of the things we want to be careful of is sending all of that silt waste to the Garfield County landfill, because if we raise rates to the point to where they're no longer coming to us, then we're not getting $48 a ton, we're getting $0 a ton. So, I mean,
Yep. That's why if you read through the rate analysis, they kind of balance that out in there. Is how much trip time is it? Where are they really coming from and going to? You know, it's a very finite balance, which is funny for trash. But how much does it cost to drive someplace? How much does it cost to dump? And how much does it cost to drive back?
Right.
So basically the $9 increase at the rate the proposal is suggesting is a balance with West Garfield for where the trash is going to come from and go to.
Okay, thanks, Matt.
And it changes, just so you know, when they're open, when we're open, times a day. They're not accepting any septic right now. They're actually a little bit cheaper than we are, but they haven't finished their ponds. So we're seeing all the septic come to us. When we do this, they will look at their rates. I'm sure Deb will look at her rates, and they will make adjustments to their rates also. So it's not like you have to raise it quite a bit to push it someplace. We're raising it what the consultants are considering is a reasonable number for how everything balances out.
Okay.
All right, thank you. Is there anyone in the public who would like to comment on this item? Mr. Hershey, please come up to the podium, and we know who you are, but give us your name and address, please, for the record.
Tony Hershey, 1110 Cooper Avenue. Just to echo, well, Matt spoke about how this would affect businesses and homeowners, especially local people. I just would like the 6 members of council present to keep in mind that when you do raise those rates, I mean, it's sort of glossed over a little bit. Those costs they're not going to pay that. They're going to pass those costs on. And I understand there's some disruption right now in the trash hauling, and there's been some sales, but they're just going to pass these costs on, particularly to small businesses, restaurants, and to local homeowners. So if you guys would just consider that too. Thank you.
Thanks, Tony. Is there anyone else who would like to comment on this item? Mr. Amershaw?
Craig Amershaw, 163 County Road 132. So I appreciate everything you guys are doing on the landfill. It's going to pay big dividends for the city going down the road. You know, just if you could look at trying to figure out some kind of funding mechanism from the gross revenues of the landfill to help out with South Canyon. As you enter South Canyon, you're mostly in the city park. And then the landfill is just off to the right, you know. So all those monies that have been made over the years in the city landfill has really come into downtown Glenwood Springs. Very little of it has gone to help out from the wide transition all the way down to the river, you know. So whatever you can figure out, 1%, 2%, 3% of gross revenues, but let's gussy up that road and really make some improvements in that first mile going into South Canyon. Whatever that is, weed mitigation, pit toilets, trash pickup, whatever that is. Just consider the landfill a huge asset of the city of Glenwood Springs, okay? And then just on a side note, I want to just thank Todd Leahy, who's not here, Mike Gamba, for all their service. You guys have done a great job. Jim, we're sorry to lose you. So are we with the other two people, but Tony Hershey and Jim Ingraham, that's, man, talk about two heavyweights. So we appreciate all you guys have done, but appreciate the landfill for what it is, but try and figure out a way to put a couple bucks into that road that come from those trash wastes. Thank you.
Thanks, Craig.
Great.
I just had a question. How much is this going to be?
Come on up to the podium just for the record. Sorry, Charlie.
Sorry. Charlie Wellman, 1121 Bennett. I just question, man, how much is this going to increase the revenue on an annual basis?
So we don't exactly keep track of where everybody comes from right now. Everybody has to have a manifest, so we will start doing that. So if it's in county versus out of county, but everybody has a manifest on their truck as they come in, so we know where it's coming from. Assuming a 50-50 split, which is probably a little bit heavier out of county, it's about a $500,000 profit at the end of the year from the rates as they sit right now.
So another $500,000?
Yes.
Okay, that's what I didn't understand. Thanks.
Yep. Okay. So we'd be looking at anywhere between $800,000 and $1 million worth of profit after the first year. But we know that this year we're projecting to be about $1.5 million in the hole. So that will just put us closer to not so much of a hole because equipment purchases, ponds, and everything else we need to do. So, and we do have a 3 to 5 year plan that we're looking at this point. It'll be added to the business plan, and we will get comments back out on that. And we are looking at what can we do for the access, the aesthetics of the landfill, signage, all those kinds of fun things. How can we make the landfill better for the residents of the city of Glenwood Springs, and in essence, Garfield County themselves too?
Thanks, Matt.
Thanks, Matt.
Is there anyone else in the public who would like to comment on this item? All right, seeing none, I will close it to public comment, bring it back to council for discussion and or motion.
I've got a few comments. They may lead me to a motion. You know, I think for the future council, keeping Jonathan's point on the radar screen is something we should keep on the radar screen. I don't know that it's a issue to tackle for tonight, but I think it's a very valid point. And I think it also should be easy to keep on the radar screen because now we're in the business. And if we're in the business, like any business, we ought to be reviewing our pricing frequently. So, you know, I don't view the rate proposal you put before us as something that's, you know, cast in stone or what have you. It's something that if you're in the business, you're reviewing at least on a monthly basis probably and being flexible with it. I agree with you, Matt, about, you know, we should be cautious as we approach these things. Now, I don't mean overly cautious, but again, just like any business, you're going to be careful. You're not probably going to double your prices and watch your customers all walk out the door, even though you might like to do that. You need to be cautious. So you're weighing the fact that you'd like to raise rates and on whom you think you can and should raise rates and being cautious with that. I think you've got a good balance here. And the last thing I would say is I agree with Craig. I give sort of long thought that some piece of the profits there should be invested in South Canyon. It's been something we have not been able to afford to invest in. And I'm not talking about all of it, but some should. And I would hope, I'm going to put in my plug here, that somebody on the new council will sort of embrace the gun club. It's actually, if there may not be many shooters, but it's considered one of the finest sporting clay facilities in all of western Colorado, based upon the geography of it or the topography of the land, but not based on the quality of the facilities. And Brian has taken that on and has been, you know, trying to take that on. And I would like to see the council kind of put that somewhere in its priorities. And I think this, the profitable operations can allow us to do some things over time to invest in what is a naturally great facility. So with all that said, I'll go ahead and make a motion that we adopt Resolution 2019-20, resolution of the City Council of the City of Glenwood Springs, Colorado, setting the 2019 landfill fees as set forth in Appendix A.
I second the motion.
All right, thanks. We have a motion by Jim and a second by Shelley to approve Resolution 2019-20, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Glenwood Springs, Colorado, setting 2019 landfill fees. Any further discussion? Shelley, did you want to talk?
I did just want to comment a little bit. I appreciate the report and the study that was done and the thought that was put into this. Matt, I think it was really helpful to kind of lay that out, and I also appreciate that for finally this year, we're going to possibly be in the black, and at least setting us up to be in the black in the future. And I'd really like to see us run our landfill as a smart business, and that means we need to keep rates competitive, but we don't want to drive things away. We want to think regionally in that aspect, and which I think this is doing. It's taking that into account. So appreciate the work on that, and at the same time I want to see us have our landfill set a high bar for performance, environmentally, and resource material management up there, and make that landfill last as long as possible, because as I think we all know, we will never site another landfill around our city, so that city has to last as long as we can make it last, or the landfill into the future. Correct. So I support this and appreciate it, and I do like the idea of let's stay on top of rates and keep them competitive and functioning well for the city as we move forward.
Mr. Mayor, one question. When does this go into effect? Or did it go into effect?
May 1st is on the resolution.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, so the motion by Jim and second by Shelley is to approve Resolution 2019-20, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Glenwood Springs, Colorado, setting 2019 landfill fees. Let's call the question.
Ingraham, yes. Godus, no. Davis, yes. Gamba, yes. Voorhees, yes. Kalp, yes. Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thanks, Matt.
Thank you, Matt.
Thanks, Matt.
Okay, moving on to board and commission appointments for Housing Commission and Historic Preservation Commission. I think we all have our ballots. I'm not, I might suggest something that might save us a little bit of time here. We have 2 candidates for the Housing Commission and 2 candidates for the Historic Preservation Commission. And we have 2 seats open for each of those commissions. And
I'm ready.
Mr. Godus.
Could I just make a motion that we appoint the 4 candidates by acclamation?
That's where I was heading.
I second that.
We have a motion by Jonathan and a second by Steve to appoint all the candidates that have applied to the Housing Commission and Historic Preservation Commission by acclamation. Any further discussion? Let's call the question.
Ingraham, yes. Godus, yes. Davis, yes. Gamba, yes. Voorhees, yes. Kalp, yes. Motion passes.
All right. Next item is the URA appointment. We are going to reschedule that for the 2nd meeting in April.
Do you want to, actually, we can't do it the 2nd meeting in April because you, underneath the charter, can't take any action other than on 2nd reading of an ordinance as a currently seated council, and by extension, you as mayor. The 2nd meeting in April, we don't know who the mayor is going to be be making the appointment. So my suggestion is we need to do this at probably the 1st meeting in May or the 2nd meeting in May, depending on the person, the time that whoever the new mayor might be.
Is this time sensitive? All right. So how about we continue?
Reschedule it once we have a new mayor.
That sounds fine by me. All right. Report from city administration, city manager.
Just have one thing. Sustainable Strategies has asked for permission. It was a late request to work with the mayor to essentially get a letter to the Trump administration making it easy for us to go after National Park Service Outdoor Recreation Legacy Partnership Programs, essentially saying, please allow cities in our situation, which are not in larger urban areas, to apply for this funding. So I don't have a draft letter yet, really, but they would like to send it out next week.
In a week. All right.
If that is okay.
Does anyone object to that?
Thank you.
And that's it. Carl, do you have anything?
I don't, since it's 7:49.
Except we have a executive session, so we're still not done.
I'm still kind of on the hook.
Yeah. Okay, we have an executive session scheduled on the agenda to discuss South Midland. Is there a motion?
Rick Voorhees, moved to go into executive session for the purpose of conducting a conference with the city manager and city attorney to discuss the city's purchase, acquisition, lease, transfer, or sale of real property, determining positions relative to matters that may be subject to negotiations, developing strategy for negotiations, and instructing negotiators, and to conduct a conference with the city attorney to receive legal advice in accordance with Colorado Revised Statute 24-6-402, parens 4, parens A, parens B, and parens E, related to South Midland.
All right, is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion carries unanimously.